infrastructure bill.
I hate all of those Republicans. So,
Well, of course you guys are. You call them all rhinos.
no, they're actual Republicans. I'm just a libertarian, like big L libertarian member
Okay.
of the Libertarian Party. They're all awful, both sides.
Okay.
But no, everything about that infrastructure bill was just awful. The way they increased the IRS was insane. The IRS.
What an awesome idea. How could you be against the increase of the IRS?
It's the IRS. It's an awful system.
It's one of the only things that actually makes money in our government. We need more IRS agents, of
By
course.
taxing citizens and taking money from them.
That's how governments work. Yeah, you have to tax citizens to pay for the government.
They're never going to decrease taxes in any meaningful way ever.
That's not what the IRS's job is. The problem with the IRS as it existed prior to that bill was that there are billions of dollars out there that the IRS knows are out there, but they don't have the agents to go after it. I think expanding the IRS is one of the only revenue positive things where when you throw more money at it, it makes more money for the government. I feel like of all the agencies we could talk about in the U.S. government of increasing funding to the IRS is the most obvious one.
So here's my question. Why didn't the Democrats, despite all of their rhetoric about not wanting to go after Americans under $400,000, reject the Crapo Amendment?
What was that amendment
The
specifically?
Crapo Amendment said that any of the new funding going towards those 87,000 new IRS agents would be not used to go under Americans with an income of less than $400,000 a year. It was proposed by a Republican. It's named after one of them, Crapo, and it was voted down on party lines by Democrats over Republicans.
I would have to see the specific language of the bill, but I don't know why you would exclude Americans earning less than $400K from
That
the
was
IRS.
that was the main talking point that Democrats used to try and get the bill through public opinion.
Okay.
And they voted against it on their own practice. It was straight up just a lie across the board. About this
I wish
infrastructure
I
bill.
knew the specific language of the bill. I know that, for instance, when you are doing audits, I know that the Republicans have required that people earning, people qualifying for the EITC, I think, have to be audited at a certain percentage. It's either 5% of EITC earners have to be audited, which is actually a huge waste of IRS resources. So I would have to see the specific language of the bill, but I don't know why you would hire new IRS agents and then gimp their ability to go after certain types of income. I know that
Again,
we
no,
got a lot of,
I would
Venmo, Cash
actually
App
I would
and
actually
everything.
agree with you on that sense. It makes no sense to add the IRS agents and not do that. But at the same time, that was the primary rhetoric behind getting the bill's public support, was saying that they would not go after Americans under 400,000. So everything they said about getting support for that infrastructure bill was straight up a lie, and it's a provable lie.
I would have to see the exact statements made, because I know a lot of statements get rung around in terms of what people say they said and what was actually agreed on, and I have to see the exact amendment, but I don't have the language of that bill in front of me, unfortunately. But
I mean that's fair.
But I mean, even regardless, if that was the primary selling point, I would have said, oh well, that's kind of dumb. That shouldn't be the primary selling point. But I'm still policy wise in favor of expanding the IRS if that means being able to go after more tax revenue that's out there that they can't right now. They don't have the manpower to.
And again, one of my big issues on taxes is that people basically use the government uses excuses constantly to put things temporarily in place to then permanently jack them up. So a good example of this would be income tax to begin with. It was started during World War I as a temporary measure only for the richest people, and it was only 2%. Now, every single person in the middle class has to deal with an insane amount of federal income tax. And this is a serious problem that the government has across the board. They continuously use specific crises to then jack up to then jack up later federal laws that just never ever go away. I mean, the FDR's New Deal is a good example of this. A lot of those programs that were designed specifically for the Great Depression are still around today, despite not really providing the same benefit that they did then.
That might be the case, but I'm not here to argue in favor of should permanent programs that now or that came about 100 years ago should or shouldn't be in place anymore. If there's a specific program we're going to talk about, I can talk about whether or not I defend or not defend that particular program. But I don't think we can get rid of income tax and still have the federal government function in the way that it does right now.
Well, no, that's why we should get rid of most of the federal government.
Yeah, but I don't know anybody that's in favor of getting rid of most of the federal government.
We could start with the FBI, the ATF, and the Federal Reserve.
So how do we investigate federal crimes with no FBI?
There are. I think honestly, in a real sense, it would be a better system to get rid of all of the auxiliary investigatory agencies like the ATF, the DEA, and ICE, and then combine them into a simplified agency that covers everything and on a much more limited scale. But that would be the initial way to do it, because the current system of the FBI is horrible. The program,
horrible how? In what ways?
The FBI was initially designed to go after political dissidents.
Okay, don't care about initially. The libertarian arguments were 100 years ago it was like this. That's
no,
not
no.
relevant. The world has changed.
The
right?
problem is it hasn't changed. They still do this today.
What is the issue? Like you say, the FBI is a horrible or terrible organization. What is a big change you'd want to see in the FBI?
I would like to see all of the high level positions basically taken out. I would like them to be not a executive agency responsible to the president. I would like to see them be responsible probably to Congress directly.
Responsible to Congress directly. Why Congress over the executive branch?
Because the executive branch at any one time is controlled specifically by one party, whereas Congress is controlled usually by, at least in large parts, both parties.
Couldn't
So
the argument
it's
be used
less.
to basically strip
it-
every
it-
single agency from the executive branch then and then put it over to Congress?
No, I think the biggest issue specifically with the FBI is that it can be used under Trump's administration, under Biden's administration, under Obama's administration to target political dissidents. And in that sense, as long as it is controlled specifically by one person and one party, then that can be targeted at the other party regardless.
I mean, it theoretically could be, but I mean, like, theoretically things could happen from, like, congressional committees as well, right? Like, it feels strange because, like, the legislative branch of our government already has, like, so much power. Like, they can overrule the president in several ways that to start stripping things from the
I
executive.
mean, they've outsourced most of their actual job to executive agencies.
I think that, well, I mean, most of those executive agencies will be will come from like some piece of legislation in Congress that says like we're granting the president the authority to make an agent to do this, and then they kind of figure out exactly like how are they going to enforce the law. But
Yes, but it should not. It was never designed that the FDA would be the ones that make laws on how drugs and food is processed. That was supposed to be Congress's job. They then outsourced that to the FDA and said we're not going to touch it. Now you have a system that makes the laws through the FDA. The FDA then investigates any breaches in those laws, and they have their own courts to justify those fines. So
well, I think every executive agency has their own. There's a name for it, like the
their
Office
own
of
their own courts. Yes.
Yeah, well, and they've got their own like it's a separate investigatory body for every federal agency. I should remember what these are called, but I don't remember off the top of my head. But those are supposed to run independent. Like anytime you hear a story where it's like watch blowers have figured out this, it's because of the office of whatever that's serving as a counterpoint to that federal agency. If there's a big problem with like the FDA, just because it exists under the executive doesn't mean that we can't change it in Congress. Like we can pass laws congressionally to change how the president is enacting certain things executively. So it seems like if there was a huge issue we had with the FDA, whether it was ran by Congress or the president, like the change would happen because if we hated it so much in Congress it would change. We'd be passing legislation already in Congress to change how the executive carries it out. No.
In theory, yes. However, I think while I think it's a good thing that Congress has needs extensive debates to really do anything productive, and it intentionally slows them down, I think the way that presidents have recently been using executive orders, and this includes pretty much every single president of the 21st century, the president has found a lot of ways to sort of get around certain things. A number of executive agencies have been, or executive orders have just been awful and borderline unconstitutional, honestly.
Sure, but well, we say borderline unconstitutional, but I mean the Supreme Court's there to check any challenges that come through. It feels like your problem is less with the organization of the government, that these executive agencies exist at the behest of the president, and your issue is more like these agencies ever existing at all. Like I have a feeling that
that's
if
part
the
of it.
FDA
Yes.
and the FBI existed under Congress, you'd still be like, well, we still need to abolish them because I don't like the FDA and the FBI. Right?
Well, yes, but I have an entire rant about drug laws and why the FDA is awful on that front. But
sure, but I mean, they'd be
yeah.
just as awful if they were under
but
Congress,
I think,
right?
what I'm saying is I think it would be less bad there. And I'm not here to, I am not here, like, ideally I would be an anarchist and like in ideals. I hate everything that the government has done so far. But I also recognize in practicality that's just never going to happen, and it wouldn't just work for the vast majority of people. So I'm willing to stand here and say that we should not make perfection the enemy of progress. And I think that while I would like to just abolish the FDA outright, it would be better to put a lot of these executive agencies more directly under the legislative authority as opposed to the executive.
Gotcha, I understand. I don't really think it would change any of the problems because we already have the ability for the legislative to vote on different things for those executive authorities to do. But I guess backing out. So what does this have to do with Joe Biden? Sounds like you just hate the government.
Partially, yes. But no, actually, I think my biggest issue of Joe Biden is his foreign policy. I have always been a big stickler for foreign policy, and it's one of, in my opinion, the most important jobs of the president.
Mm-hmm.
Less so approving what Congress passes, less so the executive orders. His primary job should be to be America's face to the world and to run the military and our foreign policy effectively.
Okay.
And I don't see situations in which Joe Biden has done that effectively. I think he royally fucked up the pullout in Iran.
In Afghanistan. Right?
Afghanistan, yes. And
how? Why do you say that?
he actually pushed back Donald Trump's date to pull out by 3 months. The
Mhm.
reason that we did it at the beginning of summer is because terrorist activities go down in that area during the summer because it's hotter, and so there's less activity just in general. And he wanted the specific date of 9/11 to be the day that pulls out for whatever reason, most likely just because it looks really nice on paper. The problem is that when he does pull out, he doesn't do any of the proper planning. He doesn't actually take any